Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from. This is Jim McKeith, and welcome to, let me share my screen here. There we go. Welcome to Developing for Android 11 and 12 with Delphi 11 Alexandria. And I see here out of the gate we have a question about C++ builder support. That is not something I can answer, a question I can answer, but if you email David Millington, he's the C++ product manager, he would love to hear from you. I know it's something that is being worked on and being discussed, just not currently available. So I did put the slides in the handout window there, so you should be able to access them. Hello, Frank in Germany. And I'll also put a link in here to the blog post that you can get that will have the replay up as well. And the links down there at the bottom of the screen, blogs.embarcadero.com/?p equals 13, 16, 12. Okay, I think I got that ready to go. Agenda, we're going to talk, it's going to kind of have, I like to do kind of a state of operating systems in Android, looking at Android 11 and 12, looking at the changes in Delphi 11, and also go into some of the new things and how you can take advantage of them, like wireless debugging. And I'm going to touch on the new permission model because I frequently end up talking to people that are like, hey, how come when I upgraded my camera doesn't work anymore in my app? It's like, well, that's the permission model. I'll probably go through it fairly quickly. I have a ton of slides, so I don't, hopefully don't have to go through all of them in too much detail because you can go review the slides, but I do want to touch on a number of things. If you don't know who I am, that's me, Chief Developer Advocate Engineer from Embarcadero Technologies, longtime software developer. And I've been carrying an Android phone as my main phone for quite a while. I actually currently have my daily driver is a Note 9, although I do have a Pixel 4 XL I use for testing and a few other older ones for testing as well. Oops, back. So this is always a fun thing to look at is a where we're at with operating system market share. So this is desktop, tablet, and mobile. So this is everything combined. And we see Android is in the lead. It actually passed Windows in 2017, which is pretty crazy. If you think back, I mean, this only goes back to 2014, but if you could think back, 10 years ago, it was Windows. It was all Windows was everything. That was all there was. So, so now the situation's different. We see that roughly Android is 30%, Windows is 30%, and then 30% is everything else, which is predominantly iOS and Mac OS, but Linux is in there as well. And one thing to keep in mind is that this is a worldwide everything view. If you look at just servers, for example, well, Linux dominates on the server. If you look at mobile OSs, which actually I think I have a slide for that as well, you'll see that Windows isn't on mobile, despite Microsoft's attempts at that. This is a breakdown of mobile manufacturer market share, and we see that Samsung actually did pass Apple for a while, but now Apple's jumped back up above Samsung. But the interesting thing here is that it's kind of a two-horse race at this point between Samsung and Apple, but Samsung's not the only Android developer. They're the only Android platform. So when you take all the other platforms into consideration here, it's 2/3 of the world, or 2/3 of the mobile devices are running Android, and 1/3 is running Apple. So here's a pie chart breaking it down, and you'll see that Google is down here in the 1%, barely showing up right there as a sliver. So again, this is worldwide. So Samsung has a wide variety of devices, both high end and low end, and so that's why Samsung has such a large market share. Whereas Google has a very small set of devices, and they actually have mid-tier and flagship both. So, it's it's hard to discount them completely as a platform that you want to be concerned about, but realistically, you want to make sure you're testing on a few Samsung devices. And I broke it down before, and the Samsung flagships actually do have a really good showing in this too, but just good to see where things are at. So this is just a market share, more details of Android versus iOS versus unknown or other, which some of those may be Android or they could be something else altogether. So we see here we're at about 70% Android and about 30% Apple. And then here's a breakdown of versions of Android, which is useful to see so that you know what versions people have, what versions of Android people have, and so you know what you want to be targeting. Now, Android typically has a really slow uptick, as we see here. Android 12, which was released in October, October 4th on my birthday, is just barely ticking up here at 5%-ish. Android 9 is on its way down. 11 or 10 has actually started to descent back in 2021, January 2021, whereas Android 11 is now dominant. So Android 11 will probably still continue to grow for the next 5 months or at least before it starts to decline as Android 12 starts to come in. If you look back, it's got a pretty consistent curve of adoption. So this is breaking down the different versions just in a pie chart. It's easier to see, and we see the release dates. Roughly once a year, we get a new version of Android, and it takes about, so let's see, Android 11 was released in September 2020. Android 11 was released in September 2020, right there, and it's still not to dominant yet. So it takes about 2 years for it to get to the dominant position and start to decline. The combined Android 9 to 11, these three here, is 76% of the market share. And less than Android 9 is only 20%. And of course, Android 9 API 28 was the last version to have the dessert names. The Apple or Microsoft, I'm sorry, Google has unfortunately stopped using the dessert names, which is it's kind of a bummer because I thought it was a nice thing to have to be able to reference them by names, but that's fine. I guess they really had a hard time coming with AQ. Wow, people all over the world coming in. Thank you so much for joining. It's so good to see so many people from all over the place coming in here. All right, so this is something that you want to be aware of, and definitely take a look at this website. If you're publishing to Android, you want to make sure you're on top of this because they change every year what the target SDK version requirement is. And with that change, there are changes to the way your application should run. If you do not update to the target SDK version, then your users will get this message saying that your app was built for an older version of Android and may not work properly. And it may, in fact, not work properly. It may not work at all, depending on what you're trying to do. Most of the time, when I've talked to developers that are having trouble with new versions of Android, thinking it's a feature missing from FireMonkey, it's usually the case that they're either have an app that is still targeting an old version because something's been not updated, or they are not following the best practices. For example, publishing with the Android app bundle format. So if you go to this website here, actually, I'll go ahead and open this up. If you come in here, it has a guidelines down here. If you scroll down here, migrating from Android 10 to Android 11, migrating from lower versions. So if your app worked on Android 8 and now it doesn't work, then you might go down here and look and say, oh, foreground service permission, I need to add a new permission requirement in here, or there's a few things here. So anyway, come down here and take a look at this and see if it worked at one version of Android and now no longer works, then this probably has a requirement in here that you're not following. And it could be one that was previously suggested, but not enforced until recently as well. So definitely be aware of this when you are targeting Android. Android changes in Delphi 11. So interestingly, Rio was a huge leap forward 10.3 for Android, probably the biggest release since Android support was rolled out. And if on the surface, there's not a lot of, doesn't look like there's a lot of changes in Delphi 11, but when you start digging into it, there's actually quite a few. I listed out all the Android, specifically RTL files that have changes, and then bolded most of them. It's like a couple lines of code, like a signature change or bug fix type things. But the ones in bold actually have quite a significant amount of changes in here. And if you look at the features that we rolled out, right, Google Play billing version 4, in-app billing has a lot of change in it. That makes sense. I flagged here that in jni.os, there's a new J environment class there. So if you've been looking for that, that's available. Also, if you're not aware of it, I'm not going to get into it, there's the Java 2 OP application that you can use to access any Android classes or any Java Android classes that are not exposed already through the RTL. The FireMonkey accessibility package is integrated. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I didn't put an uppercase M there. That's a pet peeve of mine, and I did it wrong. Improves URL management, support for file uploads in T-Web browser. There's Bluetooth and Bluetooth LE improvements for Android, as well as I think they were also in Windows. There's also the new multi-dex feature, which allows your apps to generate multiple dex classes.dex files, which honestly, I haven't dug into that very much. I'm not sure what that impact is or why you would do that, but it's now in there as well. And also uses the newer D8 dex compiler, which is a updated version of the dex compiler. And we've migrated away from the old Android support libraries to the new Android X. So real quick, if you're not familiar with the support libraries in Android X, and Android X is part of Jetpack, if you're not familiar with Android Jetpack, which is a big library of routines and code that you can use in Android development. But the support libraries is what allows you to target Android, we'll say, actually, if we go back here, right, we have to target API level 30 and be like, wait a second, we looked at that graph and there's a lot of users on earlier versions of Android, Android 9, for example, or Android even 8, right? And you might be thinking, why would I target API level 30 if there are people on earlier versions of Android? And that's where the support libraries come in. And this is something that you don't usually need to know about with FireMonkey, but I think it's really good to have an understanding of the way the platform works. The support libraries allow an application that targets Android 11, API level 30, to work on earlier versions of Android, Android 9, Android 8, etc. So that's really important. It's all built in automatically behind the scenes, so it's not something you need to worry about, but it is important that you maintain the what API level you're targeting, which I'll show you a little bit about that in a second, and the support library, or now Android X, is what allows you to have backwards compatibility. It doesn't go back all the way. There was in Rio, it was a big deal that like it stopped supporting Android 5, I think it was in Rio. I don't remember for sure, but it was an old version of Android that was stopped being supported. And the percentages, if you went and looked at the percentages of users that were using that old version of Android, it was minuscule, very, very few people. But when people were upgrading to or uploading their new applications to the Play Store, it was saying, oh, you're cutting out all these Android apps, or all these devices will no longer be supported because they only used that old version of Android. And unfortunately, people were contacting support. They're like, hey, I'm losing support for all these devices. It's like you're losing support for a lot of devices, but you're not very many users, very, very few users, because of the support libraries. So it's important to understand, what the spread is of different OS versions, Android versions. One thing I did want to point out is system.classes. There were some changes here, and I think this is a good thing. They've gone from the Android used to be Android 32 ARM and Android 64 ARM is now Android ARM 64 and Android ARM 32. So it's more consistent with the other platforms. And you can see a list of everything with what's new in the doc wiki there. What about support for Android 12? So technically, I need to say this, it doesn't officially support Android 12 or Android 13, which is in beta now, but so far everything I've tested works on Android 12, and usually actually using API 32, which is Android 13. But it doesn't technically officially support it yet. Android was released about shortly after the Delphi 11 was released. Android 12 was released. So usually there's pretty good support when that happens, but I suspect there will be an update in the near future to Delphi to 11.1, and we will see official support for Android 12. But I will show, actually, let me go ahead and show that now. I have a demo. I'll go ahead and show that now. Switch over and video. So here I am running Android 12. Oops, I didn't need to update, but there we go, 12. And I will show this app I just built. It has the glow effect on there, animation. So I select the date, hit OK, and it displays the refreshing. So I come in here and change this to rest. And there we go. That's not much, but just enough to show that it does work on Android 12. Okay, I'm back. So let's see, if you do have an existing project that was built in an earlier version of Rad Studio, it's using the old libraries, and so you do need to upgrade it. So all you need to do is go and open Android project built with an older version of Android. Actually, I can just show you here in Rad Studio. And you want to come down here and select 32 libraries. This is where the libraries are. So I've disabled this library here just to show this. And then you right click on libraries and say revert system files to default. And if this was using the old support libraries or old SDK or whatever, that would fix all that. And so there we go. If I re-expand this back out, we see those disabled ones are gone. So, and you want to do that for both Android 64 and Android 32. Now, when you install Delphi or Rad Studio, it installs Android SDK 25.25. That's the download that it includes. But then it runs an update when it's done. And that's for a few reasons. But one of the reasons is that it doesn't actually include all of the things in the download. You have to actually download some of them separately via the SDK manager. So now you can update your Android tools manually yourself. Technically, you probably use the version that was installed with Rad Studio, so maybe back it up first, just in case. But I just did this yesterday, and it worked just fine. So your mileage may vary. I upgraded to API version 32. But I always suggest you have ADB on your path, because if you're working with Android, it is so useful to have ADB. And then I add SDK manager to your path as well, although you can just go into that folder. Do ADP kill server, which gets rid of ADB, which is running in the background as the bridge, the Android debug bridge, and then run SDK manager -update. Now, if you get an error message about repositories.cfg could not be loaded, all you have to do is make sure you have that folder in the path it specifies, which is your user directory, and create an empty repositories.cfg file. And then run SDK manager update again. It's going to go through, do some things, download, and then if you do ADB version, you should see that you have the updated version of ADB. Now, if you are connecting with wireless debugging or to a newer Android device, sometimes you will need to update this. And because it's only updated by Delphi when you do an install, if, for example, you installed your SDK, let's say with 10.2, right? And you haven't ever, and as you install new versions of Delphi, you just point Delphi to that old version of the SDK, then you're still using an old version of the SDK. It doesn't have all the things in there you need. So you want to make sure you update your Android tools. Okay. Wireless debugging. This is a new feature added in Android 11, which is, so there was ways to do this with rooted Android devices previously, but Android 11, it's now built in for everything. It's a little bit of an odd process to go through to do this. I didn't put a link in here for this, but this document covers it pretty good. I'll try and remember to update the slide with that. You do need to go into developer options and go to wireless debugging, and then you want to pair device with pairing code. And then from ADB on the command prompt, type ADB start server and then ADB pair, and there's going to be a dialog that popped up when you said pair device with pairing code, and you want to use that IP address import from that dialog. All right, and that's going to prompt you for your pairing code, which is also on the dialog. You type that in there, and then you have to type ADB connect to the IP address and port that's now displayed. So that port number is going to change, and this is random each time. And once you do that, just refresh devices in the IDE, and you will see the see your device there accessible wirelessly. And I have a demo of that as well. So let me pull that up here real quick.
Something new in Android 11 that I wanted to show you is wireless debugging. Now, see, I'm running, it's a Pixel 4 XL running Android 11, and you'll notice there are no wires attached here. If I go into developer options, I can scroll down here and I can turn off USB debugging and then turn on wireless debugging. Now, there's a few steps you have to go through to make this work. These steps are only necessary if you want to take advantage of the wireless debugging. The regular USB debugging still works the same as always. So I need to go into my RAD Studio command prompt, and I have to have updated my ADB to 31 or newer. This is the, as of right now, latest version available from download from Google. Also have ADB on my path, so you'll need to do that as well. So first thing I want to do, ADB start server, and then ADB, I'm going to pair. And in order to pair, I need to get a pairing code. So that's my pairing code. And I say ADB pair 192.168.160. And these ports are random, codes are random every time. 85. And now into the pairing code is 720922. So now it's paired. You'll see that it has my device, shows my device is being paired. So now I can connect to that address there. So I go ADB connect 192.168.1.60, and then port number is 41757. Now you notice up in the IDE, it doesn't show anything. Actually, I can come here and hit refresh. Nothing's there. So I hit pair or connect, and it says over here it's connected, currently connected. And now I can go back into the IDE and hit refresh, and there we go. It has the Pixel 4 XL is available now. So let's go ahead and deploy my camera demo. Wireless debugging is a new feature in Android 11, so the fact that Delphi supports Android 11 means you can now take advantage of this feature. So here it is, the application came up. So let me go to the camera on the camera. So I tap start, comes up ask for permission. I'll say while using the app. And there we go. It's now got my little 3D printed Spartan helmet I made here. And as you can see, still no cords on this. Whoop, whoop. It's like Pinocchio, because it's connected via wireless debugging, which I think is pretty cool. USB is still great, but wireless debugging just gives you the ability to not have to fight with those USB drivers and such when those become an issue.
actually find the wireless debugging useful actually with the virtual machines. So if you're using a virtual machine and some virtual machines make working with USB devices a pain, so wireless debugging lets you just connect wirelessly and not have to worry about that. So this is the application I showed earlier, by the way. I wanted to show a little bit here. One of the things that's important, and I go into this in some of the best practices later, is I love building this REST demo. I don't need that anymore because it's so easy to build this, and I can tell some great stories about that. But I use the execute async here. That's really important on mobile. iOS is actually probably a little pickier about this than Android, but you don't want to have anything that's blocking your UI thread. So in this event handler, right, when you have a change event, if you just use execute and not execute async, then you're going to block the UI thread. Now, usually that's pretty quick, but if it's not, then if it lasts long enough, then the OS can say, oh, this app's not responding and kill your application. So you want to make sure you're using execute async. In this case, I'm using execute async and providing a procedure. You don't have to do this. This is optional, where I hide the animated any indicator. I also close the FD mem table. I think it just looks a little slicker to close that and then refresh the thing. I have a pet peeve applications, mobile applications, that you open them up and they're like, I think Twitter finally fixed this, where you see a list of things and you're like, oh, that looks interesting. You go to tap on it and then it's like, oh, just kidding. I was updating in the background, and it goes away. So it should only update, or it shouldn't change what your options are on the screen unless it's in response to a request I made. Also, I did put in the I'm in debug layout. Oh, I drug this from my other screen, but that's okay. It makes it nice and easy to see. I put the glow effect on here and animated it so that it fades in and fades out. And that is simply done. I did a event handler on here. Oh, not change, but enter. I just either invert it when it's exited or uninvert it when I go into it. But very cool. It has a nice little background thread to animate that. So Android app bundle, this has actually was added a while ago, but if you're not familiar with it, in order to submit to the App Store, you need to be using Android app bundle, which is a .aab. The APKs you need to use for debugging local use, but when you go to the App Store, you need to go to the AAB, and there's the details. It's available in DocWiki how to do that. So I'm just going to check the questions really quick here to see where we're at. So the Android phone I was using was a Pixel 4 XL. The pixels are good for developers because they get Google's a lot better about updating them. Honestly, I tried driving the Pixel 4 XL for a while and I did not like it. I mean, the phone itself was fine, but I love OS updates. I'm running Windows 11 now, but I don't like the Android 11 and Android 12. Android 12 is worse than Android 11 even. So anyway, I don't use that as my daily driver. My daily driver is a Note 9, still has a headphone jack. All right. So there's a comment here about the wake lock. So if you take a look, said you wanted to use a job scheduler instead. I have not looked at job schedulers with Android, unfortunately. You should be able to use Java 2 OP to import the libraries, but I'm not positive. I would need to dive into that for more details. Sorry. Android 12 is a new way to implement splash screens, but it requires SDK 31. When is that going to be supported? Well, the SDK 30 is now technically what we support in Delphi 11. I would suspect that at some point we'll have a update 11.1 that will add official support for API 31. I doubt they will support the new splash screens right off the bat, but it could be soon. Oh, so that link doesn't work. Oops. All right, let me update that. That's weird. There we go. There's the right link. I'm not sure what I did. Huh, weird. Okay. I'll have to fix that in post on the slides too. Okay, if you're coming from an older version of Delphi or you haven't used permissions, then you need to be aware of the new permission runtime. This was introduced in Android 6, but then I think it was Android 9 timeframe. They said you have to use the new permission model. So I'm just going to go through this real quick and review it for you. Essentially, you have to request your permissions. Instead, it used to be all the permissions were requested to install, but that had some problems. So they now is the first time you use it, the user receives the permission request. So this is what the new permission dialog looks like, pops up, and the user actually can allow or deny, and they can go back in and turn it off later, and they have the option to permanently deny it. And they can go in and turn it off. And then I think in 30, yeah, API 30 actually permissions timeout. So if the user hasn't used an app in a long time, then the permission will time out and then they'll be prompted again. So you never assume that you have the permission, even if you previously received it. You always need to check every time. So there's two categories of permissions: dangerous permissions versus normal permissions. The user is not prompted for normal permissions. For example, internet vibrate, or Bluetooth. Interestingly, internet used to be when you installed an Android app, if it had internet, it would say, warning, you may get charged for data, but anymore, we don't seem to worry about that too much anymore. Dangerous permissions, though, are privacy or potentially costly. So SMS is still, at least last I checked, still listed as a dangerous permission because it is potentially costly and also potentially a privacy threat. But the rest of these are really privacy things: access your contacts, access locations. There's an article a while back about how like every app on Apple and Android both would access your contacts and upload them to a server because people are just migrating or mining data. And so people would install like a flashlight app and there was no permission for contacts. So it's just grabbing your contacts and uploading them. Luckily, now we have a contacts permission. So user approves an entire group. For example, both sending and receiving SMS is approved at the same time. You still must declare and request all permissions from the OS in the manifest, and then also request it when you use it. So this is what the syntax looks like for asking for permission. So instead of, so you can see here we have if Android, here's what the permission looks like. If it's not Android, then we just turn the location sensor on. But you have to permission service request permission, and what permission it is. The GPS is fine, access fine location. And then you have a procedure that happens if on the response, so it's asynchronous, and we look to see if it was granted. If it was granted, activate the location sensor. And if it wasn't, then you take away that option to do that. So you do problem using. So Alex, I would suggest if you're having problems with the location sensor, oh, you said it worked in 11, but not 12. It might be updated in update 1. If you make sure you submit a bug. So if you have encountered a problem, make sure you make a reproducible sample, make a new application, reproduces the sample, submit a bug in Quality Portal. I can't say whether things will be fixed unless it's in Quality. If it's not in Quality Portal, probably won't get fixed. If it is in Quality Portal, then it has a chance of getting fixed. So make sure you submit it in Quality Portal. I cannot say if it is in Quality Portal already, I can't say whether or not it's going to be fixed or not. I don't know for sure. And if I did, I wouldn't be allowed to say, unfortunately. So permission services, it's all in the doc wiki. You can read about it there. And then is permission granted method will tell you if the permission has been granted. There's also an is every permission granted method that will let you provide a list of permissions and say, are all these permissions granted? So you can check, because you never assume it's still granted. So even if it was granted to you earlier in this application session, don't assume it's still granted. Okay, so when to ask for permissions. This is really important. When Android first rolled out this new permission model, a lot of applications would just ask for every permission when it first ran, and I would just deny. I'm like, why do you need to access this? No, you can't access it. So this is a really important strategy for when to ask for permissions and how to ask for permissions. So you can essentially, there's 4 quadrants of permissions. There's critical permissions and secondary permissions. There's clear permissions and unclear permissions. A user is more likely to grant permission if you ask at the right time and in the right way. For permissions that it isn't clear why your app needs them, then you need to educate the user before asking, or provide education if the user denied the first request. Don't request all the permissions at once. So for example, let's say I've downloaded a photo app and I fire it up and want to take a picture, and it says, do you want to grant my excellent photo app permission to use the camera? Okay, clearly, if I want to take a picture, I need to give it access to the camera. That makes sense. So yes, I will give it permission. That's a critical, clear permission. But if then it pops up and says, do you want to also grant it location permission and access to your contacts and access to permanent storage? I'm like, whoa, hold on. Why do you need these permissions? No, I'll start denying them. And so you want to think about that and use a strategy. So if it is a critical permission, ask up front. So when your app first launches, ask right away. If it's clear, just ask, right? So if it's an SMS app and it's asking to use SMS, yeah, sure. If it's unclear, then provide a dialogue that educates the user. And you might provide maybe it's a full screen that says, hey, we need these permissions and this is why, right? You could do something like that. So for example, a note-taking app that stores where the note was taken, then it needs location information. Education and onboarding greets the user when they first run the app, for example. If it's secondary permission, so a permission that's not needed to use the basic functionality of the app, then wait to ask. So an example of secondary permissions is a permission that's only used occasionally. So for example, let's say it's a note-taking app and it has a feature where you can take a picture and attach it to a note. Users may go forever without using that one feature, right? So you don't need to ask for that camera permission right away. So those you want to wait until they're requested. And again, if it's unclear, you want to educate the user. Okay, so there's more questions here. Try an old app on Android 12. You see what the splash screen looks like. Okay, Mark, put a feature request in Quality Portal for that. I don't know if it's on the roadmap, something they're considering already, but if you want to see support for the new splash screen, put a feature request in Quality Portal. Werner's asking, why can I not connect to another Windows PC where my Android phone is connected? Okay, so 2 things. One, you can do wireless debugging, which I showed earlier. That would be my recommendation. It's actually not that much slower. It's a little slower because USB is not as fast as wireless, but it's still not that bad, actually. The other option is if you go to DocWiki, and there is a remote Android article in here, I think, and I haven't tested this in a while, but I actually wrote the original article in here. Running and debugging your Android application on a remote Android device. So if your Android device is connected to a remote machine, you can use the steps in here to do a tunnel and connect remotely to ADB on the device. So that would be my suggestion, Werner. Use wireless or remote ADB. Tyler wired debugging with Android 12, but breakpoints were ignored. No step-by-step debugging were possible. Oh, okay, interesting. I haven't tried that. I might look into that. That's interesting. I wouldn't have expected that. Now that I think about it some more. Written mobile menus and file open dialogues and form switching and such by hand. What do you recommend for mobile interfaces? I love the what's it called? Multi-view. That's it. Multi-view and tab control are really, really useful. Also, check out the open source. So multi-view. Oops. T-frame stand. I should have put a slide in here for this. This is really useful as well. And T multi-view. Why is this not going? Oh, lovely. It was working earlier today. The multi-view, it really useful. Multi-view or T-tab control. Super useful. If you're not familiar with those, especially T-frame stand, really, really good. Andre does a lot of really great stuff. He has a few libraries here worth checking out. The Mars Curiosity is a REST library. T-frame stand and T-form stand. T-frame stand is kind of the evolution of T-form stand. Or make it easy to do. It's hard to explain. Check it out. I think he has a webinar or something like that on too. And then he also has his newest one is FMX, or at least I think it's his newest one. It's a Flutter inspired framework, visual framework for FireMonkey. And he just wrote a book, Delphi GUI programming with FireMonkey as well, which is available through Packet Publishing. Oh, shoot. I should have put in Skia for Delphi too. Man, I always forget. If you're not familiar with Skia for Delphi, this is a Skia for, or no, not looking Andres, just Andres is. If you haven't looked at Skia for Delphi, this is really cool as well. And they've got a new release coming out in the near future. But it's Skia is a cross-platform 2D graphics library that was developed by Google. It's open source, and so these guys have made it available for Delphi, and it works across all platforms and is really fast. And so if you want to have fast 2D graphics like SVGs or Lottie files for animations or all sorts of crazy stuff, it's just really, really cool, really powerful, really fast, really smooth. Support for right to left languages, all sorts of cool stuff. Very cool. And codecs for like WebP and stuff like that. Oh, I didn't know I had WebP. Every time if I don't pay attention to this, they keep adding new features. It's so cool. So definitely check that out. User, let me go back to the slides. Actually, I'll bring up this here while I'm looking at the Q&A. So there's a question about roadmap. I don't think there's any plans to have a full roadmap update. There will be some possibly sneak peek stuff in the Delphi's 27th birthday webinar next week, which if you're not registered for, go check that out. Should be a lot of fun. I have not tried I would not try Fire UI Preview in 11. If there's a bug, report it, but I'll try to test. Anyway, so I don't think there's going to be a roadmap. I don't believe there's any plans, unfortunately, for that. I wish there were, but why aren't event triggers available in the T web browser component in FireMonkey as in the VCL version? So I don't know exactly what you're referring to, but the web browser, the TVCL web, the T web browser on VCL is a completely different creature in the implementation behind the scenes than the FireMonkey one. So there are some things you can do. You can have if you write the code in the web browser, you can put JavaScript there that can trigger events that you can respond to in your application on FireMonkey, but it's not going to behave the same. It's completely different implementation. It just happens to have the same basic structure. If I want to target old Android versions, industrial terminals generally, what must I do on newly installed Delphi 11? It depends on how old. So there is a page in DocWiki here. Platform status. This is the official list of what platforms are supported. So Rad Studio 11 Alexandria supports all the way back to Android 8.1. If you're going back before Android 8.1, you're not going to, I don't know if there's a way to get there with Delphi 11 Alexandria. You would need to probably use an earlier version. And that's just because the base libraries, that the Jetpack, Android X, or support libraries only support a certain range of platforms. And so in order to support Android 11, you have to drop support for Android 7 and 6. Okay, so now, well, depends on the feature you're using, right? So if there's three things, right? There's a maximum API version, a minimum API version, and a target API version. And if you are requiring certain features, then you have to change your target. If you change your target, then that changes your minimum. So it's kind of a window. It's hard to there's documentation in the Android SDK about that. But if you absolutely have to support earlier versions of Android, unfortunately, you would need to use an earlier version of Delphi. And then you're going to lose some of the newer features that are available on the newer platforms. You might be able to go in to, so you have this Android manifest template. Oops. Come on. I have my one monitor set up with high DPI, and it's like 300% or something like that, just because I was filming a video. And every single, I mean, it's like nothing behaves appropriately when you do that. So anyway, in here, right here is minimum SDK version, target SDK version. If you are very careful about what you're using and go in and change your libraries in here, you might be able to target an earlier version of Android, but you're going to have to really consult the Android SDK and stuff, because you're fighting against the features that are built into Delphi. I mean, it's a assumes a certain setup, and if you change your setup, I've done it before for various things, but you know, you're making it harder on yourself. So your best bet would be to use an earlier version of Delphi. I need to change my scaling on my other monitor. Right. But you might be able to change the Android manifest. When are you going to fix issue with taking pictures on newest Android? I'm not aware of an issue, so if you are aware of an issue, please report the bug in Quality Portal and then monitor that. Make sure you provide an example of what it works. I did the example showing taking picture on Android 11. I haven't tried it on Android 12 yet, but I think it still works. Internal testing, yes. We do internal testing, but there is a lot of potential, a lot of things to be tested. That's why Android 11 or Android 12 is not officially supported yet. After a while, is there a way to know? Okay, so if Android gets permissions after a while, is there a way to know what time the time is? Check the Android SDK. That's why you have to check for permissions every time, because the user can manually turn off permissions. So yeah, you always need to check. Is there a fix for location? Mark, I don't know. Check Quality Portal. If it's a bug, you got to check Quality Portal. I don't know. I mean, I can pull up Quality Portal and read you what's there. That's the best I can do. Matthias, I use a Pixel 4a with Android 12 and always asks me to update. I'm not sure I understand your question. What about iOS 12 in Red 11? What was developed would not run on iPhone 6. Yeah, that's the same issue. If you iOS, so yeah, you only support a limited window here. So for example, here's where Rio added support for iOS 12. It only goes back to iOS 10 and 10.3. It doesn't go back to iOS 6. So you're not gonna you can't support that huge range of apps. I actually pulled an old iPad out of storage and fired it up, and I couldn't get anything to run on it because that's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. Can I implement the same functionality with FireMonkey? Of West versions. Okay, let me go to actually finish through my slides here. I see we're getting running out of time. So some best practices here. Again, use async versions of methods. Do not block the UI thread. Always use HTTPS. This is a change that Google made. If your app makes a non-secure connection, it will kill your application. So make sure you're using HTTPS. If you're not familiar with the new client libraries, check those out. You can still use Indy. I think I find a lot of cases the client library is easier, but it's nice to have Indy as an option. So if you're doing simple stuff, even actually not that simple, client library is pretty powerful, the new HTTP client library, but if there is a specific situation you use Indy, you can still use that. And get to know the parallel programming library, which makes it really easy to do workers, background tasks, etc. Also, the IO util, especially tpath, so you can have access to specific folders. There are certain folders you need to use in order to have your app behave correctly. So make sure you know what those folders are, and you really need to be familiar with the requirements from Android as far as what folders you can access when and such. And then also, so there's a number of log utilities out there, and I didn't put links in here for that. That would have been cool. Gridgy has one, CodeSite, etc. But you can always just use logd and then use ADB and logcat. And Dave Nottage at Delphi Worlds has this device lens, which is a great tool for giving you access to your ADB logs. So you can, I mean, it's just way more useful tools for Android development. So definitely check that out if you're not familiar with it. He also has Codex, but device lens is probably the more useful one. And he has Castry library. So check it out. Go sponsor him. He's doing awesome stuff. I love Dave, man. He's great. If you want to write to the SD card, so general storage, here's a Stack Overflow post about this. Now, it doesn't talk about removable SD cards. So in order to access the removable SD card, you need to get the path to the removable SD card, which is not the Android calls the built-in storage the SD card as well. So this talks about how to write to the SD card to get permission for that, but then you need to get the removable as well. And so if you go into androidapi.jni.os, you can find there's calls in there for get external storage directory, get external storage state. Is there an SD card? Is it inserted? Right? Those sort of things here. Check that out. Also, when it comes to permissions, there is a mobile permissions library in GitHub and or in Git as well as on GitHub that simplifies dealing with permissions. Okay, I'm gonna do some more Q&A. I think that's, yeah, so let's go ahead and do Q&A. If you're not on Rad Studio, start a trial, Delphi trial, check out Community Edition, and upgrade today if you're not on 11. But let's go ahead and do some more questions here. So can I implement the same functionality with T-Web Browser as VCL T-Web Browser? Okay, so here's the thing. Everything is possible, right? Delphi is written in Delphi. If you write enough code, you can do anything you want to do. Now, does T-Web Browser VCL behave exactly the same as T-Web Browser FireMonkey? No, they are two different components based on different libraries, so they're going to behave differently. Now, I would suspect you can probably get most of the functionality with a little effort, not requiring a lot of effort, but a little effort. It depends on what you're trying to do. But you can probably get most of it with a little effort. I did a blog post, I think, or a video a while back showing how to view source in the FireMonkey T web browser, and you have to have JavaScript in there that can then grab the source. Actually, you can inject the JavaScript from Delphi, and then the JavaScript will then export the source out to the event handler. So there's a lot you can do, but it requires a little effort. Richard, is it possible to produce a similar webinar geared towards iOS? Yes. I will look at that and see. I don't use iOS a lot, but I can look at that. I'll look into it. Hey, Brian, make a note of that, please, that we want to do that if you're still on. Okay, if there's a bug report, I don't know. Oh, there is a fix. Oh, sorry, Mark's saying there is a fix. The fix. Okay, there is a fix. Okay, great. Yeah, there is a fix for location sensor for Android 12 in the bug report. So Quality Portal is a great place if you're not checking it out. Sometimes there'll be reports in there. Dave Nottage hangs out in there a lot, and he's a really smart guy. And sometimes he'll provide workarounds or fixes and stuff like that. When will Android 12 be officially supported? When there's a release that supports Android 12. Not trying to be coy, but I don't have an answer there. I would expect that there is a 11.1 coming in the near future. Now, does near future mean a few months or 1 month or a few weeks? I don't know. I can't say. But I suspect it's coming soon. Great, glad to hear that works. Sorry, I misread your comment, Mark. Location works. Oh, there we go. Andreas provided a link for it. So there's a link if you're looking for a location sensor. How to deal with casual user crashes. So I will check the Fire UI later, Matt. Frank, sorry, I'm running out of time right now, and I do have another meeting I have to get into. Casual user crashes. So there are libraries that you can use to collect crashes. And let's see if I can find this one. I can't remember if Grigi does this or not. Cloud Logger. Yes, cloud. I spelled it right. Oh, there it is. Nope. Okay, so check out Cloud Logger. It's a remote logging for Windows, iOS, Android, Mac, and Linux. You do need to be aware that if you are collecting additional data, you do need to get your user's permission. But you could use, in theory, Cloud Logger, and so you could have an option maybe for the user to enable it if they're like, I get this crash occasionally. And then you say, okay, here's how you enable logging. It's in there, and then they have to agree and accept the permissions, and then it will could grab that log and send it to you. So that would be my suggestion, Gridgy Cloud Logger. There we go, GitHub repository. And they haven't updated it in a while, but it probably just still works. If you're not following Gridgy, they do so much good stuff as well. Definitely worth checking out. There's so many amazing libraries out there. Definitely, Dave Nottage runs a Slack, Delphi Slack, great place to hang out and be involved. Delphi Praxis is a great community where you can be involved and get tips and suggestions and such. Okay, so that is it. I am out of time. I will update that, Brian. If you could remind me to do we want to do an iOS deep dive as well. I'll have to. I'm fairly familiar with Android, but still, this webinar represents numerous days of preparation, as I'm sure you can imagine. So I will definitely put some plan and prioritize putting some time into iOS, diving into that. I will update that link there. It is in the chat with the correct link as well. And I think that's it. All right, so thank you everybody for joining. I appreciate your time, appreciate you being part of the community and stuff. And I hope to see you online for the Delphi 27 birthday celebration next week on Monday. Take care, everybody.